My name is Duke Benjamin, and I head the Nigeria Energy Support Program, which is a technical assistance program co-funded by the European Union and the German government. The program is implemented by GIZ in close collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Power and aims to foster domestic market for investments in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and rural electrification. For those who are just joining us, you are welcome. We are now at the afternoon session of the event. In the morning session, we received opening remarks from the Permanent Secretary Power and the goodwill messages from the EU, the German government, the GIZ, and the Senate. We also had a keynote speech by the Honorable Minister of Power, followed with a ribbon cutting ceremony by the Ministry by the Minister of Power and the Country Director, GIZ Nigeria and ECOWAS. Ladies and gentlemen, the platform being launched today is a key milestone of Nigeria's Sustainable Energy for All initiative commenced by the Federal Ministry of Power. In this afternoon session now, we will be having a roundtable discussion on the topic digital transformation of the power sector in Nigeria, followed by a workshop on the benefit of the central data management system as a tool for improving energy access in Nigeria. At this point now, I would like to hand over to the moderator of the roundtable discussion on the topic, the digital transformation of the power sector in Nigeria. Please welcome with me, Mr. Moderator, by name Mr. Abba Aliyu, who is a Senior Special Assistant on Policy to the Ministry of Power. Abba, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Duke Benjamin. I hope you can hear me very well, right?
Loud and clear.
Okay. This particular session, what we are going to do is we are going to have a panel discussion that will look into digital transformation in the Nigerian power sector. And the format of this particular event is we are going to have 4 panel members that will be here with me, and I will just moderate the session. Already, Duke Benjamin that introduced this session is going to be one of the panel members. And we have also Engineer Farouk Yusuf Yabo from Federal Ministry of Power to join me here. And we have an industry expert, Engineer Ido. He will also be part of this panel session. Engineer Ido, please. And we have also an international expert that will also join us online, Mr. Carlos Milo. Mr. Carlos, welcome. Okay, Mr. Carlos is part of the NESP program. Now, without much ado, I would like to just set the stage for this session. And I'm setting this stage by taking us into the perspective of what the power sector globally has been experiencing. Now, if you look at backwards, the Nigerian power sector, not only in Nigeria, but globally, has been witnessing a lot of transition, a lot of disruption, in my own words. Initially, all over the world, the power sector, it's vertically integrated and wholly owned by the central government. But the reforms that started in the 1990s, more especially from the Latin America, we have witnessed the disintegration of the power sector and the introduction of the private sector in the management of affairs of the power sector. That, to us, is one of the key changes in the history of the power sector globally. And in Nigeria, as specifically, we have also witnessed the unbundling of the Nigerian Electricity Power Authority to what we have now in terms of segmented entities of generation, transmission, and distribution. To us, this is one of the disruption that has happened in the power sector globally. Beyond this, we have also witnessed the emergence of renewable energy in the global power sector. Initially, there was the thought that renewable energy, despite the promising prospects of that technology, nobody has given it the benefit of doubt that the power sector can be driven by renewable energy. But what we have now is a renewable energy driving the power sector. So to us, this is another disruption that has taken place in the power sector globally. Now, another thing is emerging, and this new thing that is emerging is also, in our view, going to disrupt the power sector again. And what is happening is the digital penetration of infrastructure and application in the power sector. We are currently witnessing the emergence of smart grid, virtual grid, smart metering, and a lot of other things. And based on this, we feel that it is time for us to sit and reflect and find out and ask ourselves, how are these things going to impact Nigerian power sector? What should be ready? What should be aware of? Or what will be the impact of such kind of penetration in our policy making, in our regulation, in our operation, and in our trading within the Nigerian electricity power sector? And it is based on this that we are having this panel discussion to ask ourselves the relevance of this digitalization in the Nigerian power sector. And with me, we have a diverse team made of professionals that have a total of over 150 years experience, combined experience in the power sector. And I think these are the right people that we should have this kind of discussion with. So without much ado, I would like to introduce the panel that we have, that we're going to have this discussion with. To my left, we have Engineer Yusuf Yabo, who is currently the Acting Director in the Renewable and Rural Access Department, the department responsible for driving policy implementation and program of renewable energy in Nigeria. Beyond that, he's the focal person of the C4All, which is the initiative that we are celebrating today. One key also things that's associated with Engineer Farouk Yabo is the fact that consistently has been a technical assistant to 4 successive honorable ministers of state at the Federal Ministry of Power. And this is quite a unique opportunity that give him a unique opportunity to understand the sector in various dimensions. And to my right, we have Engineer Idowu Oyebanjo, an international power sector expert with quite experience in the United Kingdom electricity sector. He's a current registered and a United Chartered Power System Engineer with bias in power system planning, protection, control, and management. He has over 25 years experience that span through academia and industry while working in both the oil and gas industry as well as the power industry. We also have Duke Benjamin of NESP, who introduced this session. He's joining us online. Mr. Benjamin, as was introduced earlier, heads the Nigerian Energy Support Program of GIZ. The program advises key stakeholders in the Nigerian electricity industry on reliable and sustainable electricity supply. Before joining GIZ, Duke supported German companies to establish and expand their economic relation in Nigeria as the deputy delegate at the delegation of German industry and commerce in Nigeria. So welcome, Mr. Duke Benjamin. Then lastly, we have Carlos Miro, who is the head of unit of Sustainable Energy Access in the Nigerian Electricity Support Program. Mr. Carlos has background in international cooperation and European affairs. He has been working in the renewable energy since 2011 at different entities like that of European Commission, the Alliance for Rural Electrification, and GIZ. Without this, I would like us to all welcome our panel members, and we will go straight into our discussion. Our discussion will be centered around key areas, and in specific terms, we are going to look at the role of data and digitalization in the Nigerian power sector and the global power sector. That is one. We will also look at what Nigeria can learn from other entities that were able to implement digitalization in their market, in their electricity market. And we will also look at the implication of data-driven decision making in policy making, regulation, and as well as operation of the electricity sector. Then lastly, we will look at what are the challenges associated with implementation of such kind of disruption in the electricity market and how we can mitigate those barriers. To this end, I would like to start with the Federal Ministry of Power, and I'm going to start with Engineer Farouk Yabo. And my question is to tell us, Engineer, what does digitalization mean, and why should Nigerian policymakers be concerned with digital transformation in the power sector? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abba Aliyu. And I think to go straight to your point, the digitalization of any system, not just the power system, sector, implies transparency, accountability, easy way of doing things. So in the context of the power sector, one will imagine that digitalization of the power sector will do exactly the same thing. And incidentally, in the current context of the Nigerian power sector, we are challenged by a number of issues that are heavily around issues to do with data, transparency, accuracy, responsibility, and so on and so forth. So to my understanding, digitalization simply means doing things in a new way, making sure you are now in a situation where you use modern technologies, get things done in the proper way. We are aware that the power sector itself is globally an issue of balancing demand and supply. Now, you first of all need data to establish what is your demand, and then you need data to establish what is your supply. In the current context of Nigeria, we have a vision 30-30-30, which is a vision to deliver 30,000 megawatts of grid-connected power, with at least 30% of that coming from renewable energy by the year 2030. In order for us to be able to determine or to be able to connect with this particular vision, we first of all need to understand exactly what kind of infrastructure is required to achieve this particular feat. And so what this particular digitalization means for us, particularly with regards to what we have launched today, is setting up that foundation that will allow us to build and then take this particular vision forward in a very data-oriented mission. And so, in a nutshell, transparency, accountability, and simplicity is what I can connect, or I can visualize digitalization to mean overall.
Thank you, Engineer Fabiano. But I would like to get more insight in terms of policy making. Why should we bother about that requires data for policy making, or how would that digitalization policy perspective help?
I think, as you know, the electricity industry is structured around the policy makers, the regulators, the operators, and the customers. Now, each and every one of these players has a unique role they play. And without the ability to create that platform where each and every one of them is on the same page, you are nowhere close to a sustainable, reliable electricity market. What is, for instance, happening in Nigeria today, visualize a system that is more or less not able to account across the value chain what is where. And so we are lacking in so many areas, for instance, in the case of your ability to even quantify and value the cost of kilowatt hour you are selling into a customer. You are also unable to be able to get your revenues from the customer back to the various entities within the sector. So I think for a policymaker, of course, for a regulator as well, the key thing is for us to be able to be in a position to have a balancing act where whatever is done is clearly and transparently administered across the entire value chain.
Thank you very much. That's quite clear. And I would like to go to Carlos Munoz. And my question, Mr. Carlos, is based on your international experience. I would like to know, how do you see digital transformation or digitalization shaping the electricity sector globally? What's your experience? How disruptive or how impactful is digitalization in the international electricity market based on what you have seen out there?
Thank you very much for the question. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So my experience is more based on Nigeria than any other sector, but notwithstanding this, I have had some experience indirectly when I was based in Brussels, supporting other programs in the field. I would say I would highlight two important aspects that digitalization actually has eased, and one of them is on the technical side, and this is operations. Yeah, by digitalizing, by taking advantage of digital technologies, remote or telemetric equipment, yeah, that is, for example, used nowadays by inverters and smart meters. You can actually automate the operations. You can also operate systems remotely. Engineer Farouk was saying before, yeah, trying to get some data on demand and supply, and allowing, like, this will allow in the end the analysis on the performance of the systems. The second aspect I would like to highlight is on the finance side. As you know, investors need normally they are more comfortable if they can do a full know your customer process, yeah, and digitalization actually allows this. So basically, for example, in the sector of mini grids, yeah, companies via the smart meters can generate a good profile of their clients, and this kind of information is very valuable to then unlock access to large-scale finance, for example, from like entities like pension funds. Yeah. So I just would like to stay at this. I don't, but let me know if you want me to elaborate on anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlos. I think one key thing, recurring thing that you mentioned, which also Farouk mentioned, is the balancing of demand and supply. And based on that, I would like to go to and ask him that with this importance of balancing the demand and supply along the electric value chain, and also having an unbundled sector that has generation, transmission, and distribution, what is the impact of this digitalization data align this value chain of the electricity segment of the electricity value chain? How do you see that aligning those segments?
Thank you very much. That's a very if you had the 5 focus areas, Honorable Minister, alignment with exactly what we have. The 5 key areas of the ministry. One is the interface issues. Interface from gas suppliers, Gencos, companies, ECN, to the discourse, and then to the most important element of a power system, consumers. Now, when you talk about alignment of various segments by value chain, you need data. Benjamin Franklin was the one who said, if you fail to plan to fail. So any power system that we see that there is no data, any power system that an investor, World Bank or whatever organization sees that there is no data, they are reluctant to put money. It's doomed to fail. You can do the privatization 10 times. If you fail, there is no data. Data meaning of any successful power system. So if we want to align the various parts of the electricity value chain, this project in all the support you can get, both in Africa as well as outside Nigeria. So that is number one. Data is life. Everything is data. So if you want to match demand and supply for any reason, data, you need to have that information. So that's just one of the key focus areas of and the Ministry of Power and the government. And if you look at the Siemens deal, which we have in the Presidential Power Initiative, PPI, which is something that the ministry is driving fully and in support of, you can see that this is about the best thing that has happened to Nigerian power sector since inception. And we have to be grateful for this initiative, the PPI, because what it aims to do is to now align the capacity. The capacities from generation now, we've got overwhelming capacity of over 13,000 gigawatts. And you've got battery sum that can be transmitted, was can be distributed. So people need to know how much generation do we have as a live data. Now there's so much advantage in this, and that's what the PPI is trying to do. Also, we talk about smart metering. It's metering, especially this metering that they are giving to customers free of charge, which is a brilliant concept. Better to align it with project. It's not just metering, 6 million meters, that's laudable, that's good. But these meters, information from these meters, so customer information data, consumer consumption data, and many other things should be aligned with this project that we are talking about. So that is just on the second, on another initiative, on the one initiative, and the relevance of data to that initiative. Liquidity, we've talked about liquidity. This is grounding the power sector. Now, the focus of the minister is on addressing liquidity issues. How will you address that? You need to have see-through of both power flows, which is the movement of power, which is from supply of generation downwards, and financial flows. Financial flows go upward in the opposite direction. It's coming from the disco. We all have to see it. And when I say we, I mean relevant stakeholders. They need to see it. Without that, you can't have a power system. It will never work.
Thank you very much, Engineer Joe. And one thing that I picked from your answer is the role of data in creating transparency, which also portrays the facts of what Engineer Farouk mentioned. Now, if data is this critical to the power sector, and I'm now going to ask Duke, how do you see what we have, the launching of the central data management system? How do you see it transforming the Nigerian electricity power sector?
Thank you very much, Abba, for that question. Well, let me first start by saying that the so-called Industrial Revolution 4.0, which you mentioned at the beginning, is actually disrupting almost every sector in every country. So same will go for the power sector. But coming back to your question with regards to how do I personally see this CDMS system, improving the energy or power access in Nigeria, I think I will basically have to acknowledge all the things that my former speakers have said. I think the Nigerian electricity supply industry, or the industry itself, has had lack of transparency in the past years or decade, and that has made it almost impossible for people to invest. And just like Mr. Edowu said, it's important to know what you are buying. So this CDMS now will create valuable data for people to understand the real condition, the real infrastructure that is on ground, and the real potential that could be in a site they would want to invest. The importance of this is that this is not like he said, she said. It's something that is based on facts. So facts give you transparent and valuable information which you can communicate on paper, and it will be valued and trusted. So it gives us trusted, transparent information which we can now use to, add and minus in our business cases and plans to understand if an investment will be reasonable or not. That will ultimately lead to people or investors coming more into the power sector. And that, at the end of the day, since we know that it's the private sector that actually drives, how will I say, every industry or employment, that will actually ultimately lead to more energy access for people, and which will ultimately as well improve the standard of living in Nigeria. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. And talking about energy access, I would like to go back to Farouk. I think one of the mandates of your department is energy access. And beyond that, from what you also mentioned, that's part 2. Now the question is, how do you see this central data management and also the entire combination cocktail of digitalization, infrastructure, and appliances? How do you see that supporting your department in creating energy access across the country?
Okay, thank you again, Abba. First of all, I would like to remind us that the central data management system have about 4 components. We have the landing page, where you have a link of so many other access. Then you have the web map. On the web map, you are able to track and trace at low voltage level in the country. Now, in terms of energy access, we have 2-pronged approach to it. We have the grid connection, and we have the off-grid connections. Now, the web map itself allows you to see, compared to the location of your clusters or your villages and communities, what is the least cost option. So here we're talking about cost. In the past, when you have top-down approach to electrification, you find the central government, for instance, awarding contracts to extend grid communities that probably are far from the grid. And so you have a lot of issues with taking electricity far away in terms of losses along the line and in terms of the viability of the project when you look at the number of people you are connecting through a very high investment. So with this particular development, we are now in the position to take decisions that X and Y communities are best electrified because they are very close to the grid by just sending up a line. X, Y, and Z communities are far away, 10 kilometers and beyond, and therefore it's not cost efficient for us to do that. So you are better off going a mini grid that is standalone system, which is grid ready. Q and X communities are maybe 50 kilometers around, and they are scattered communities, so you are best able to put them solar home systems across them. So that automatically gives you a least cost option of planning your electricity system. Now, when you go back to the web manager, I mentioned two so far. When you look about, come back to the data manager, this is a system that is developed within the CDMS that allows you to query information and get real-time, actual, accurate data about any community in terms of its GPS coordinate, in terms of its relation with so many other parameters. And when you go back to the mini-grid monitor itself, it gives you that ability to monitor an existing grid, and you are able to now do all of this within a common platform. Now, clearly, all of this will drive the best choice of moving demand and supply, and eventually transparency around the ability, for instance, to monitor what kind of power is being generated where. I mentioned earlier in the morning that the Nigerian Electricity Commission, a regulatory commission, is already piloting IoT meters, smart meters, in around the PDAS. Now, with such an arrangement, you are able to look at the APIs of those meters directly connecting to the GPS coordinate of those PDAS. And you come into this website, you are able to see how much power is actually passing through each of these conductors. And you are beyond that able to see how many hours of supply, for instance, you are. So it comes around with a lot of innovative ways of putting responsibilities to individual utilities, regulators, government, and customers. And of course, the utility is able to kind of arrangement see which customers cluster is the best in terms of sending power in the morning, or which is best in terms of sending power in the afternoon. In terms of grid management itself, at distribution level, all this can happen, this kind of CDMS, and which is going to create a lot of new value addition in terms of the overall power sector development in the country.
Thank you very much, Engineer Farouk. And one intriguing question that keeps bothering me, which based on what the panelists keep saying, is one of the ultimate aim of digitalization and having an accurate data is facilitating investment. But this investment cannot just come on its own. The private sector are the ones that will make this investment. So now my question to Carlos Miro, being part of the NESP program, how do you see the private sector as an investor, off-grid or on-grid? How do you see benefiting from this central data management system, or making use of it for my own benefit, not now the policymaker or operation maker, as an investor, as an independent investor in the power sector? How do you see it helping my business in making decisions or operations?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I will focus on, I will reply to the question by focusing on rural electrification, meaning by that off-grid renewable energy solutions, which are the ones that will benefit the most from this platform. So in the end, the central data management system, what it is doing is to provide very vital data for the private sector. Data on the demand side, but also data on where the grid is. These are the two main parameters that will allow a company to decide where to plan, for example, a mini-grid project, an isolated mini-grid project in Nigeria. The central data management system, what it is doing in the end is to allow these companies to plan based on the data that are already contained there, to pre-plan, to identify potential sites without having to send people to the ground already. They will only send people to the ground to the areas where they already know, based on the preliminary data from the central data management system, that they have potential. And by doing so, the central data management system is allowing or helping them to reduce project development costs. Yeah, it is offsetting project development costs, which are very intensive for off-grid, especially during the site identification stage. So, yes, that's the main point. Then, in addition to that, of course, yeah, more data, the availability of more data means as well probably fast-tracked electrification. Yeah, people, companies will be able to identify potential sites faster, and then from there plan faster, and then from there will be a faster pace of project development in Nigeria. Yeah. This is what I would say. Please let me know if you want me to elaborate on any points. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. It was very clear, and that prompted another question which I would like to ask Engineer you. Also, based on your experience in the United Kingdom electricity, what I would like to find out is the penetration of digital infrastructure and application. Would it require change of regulation or different policies to guide the operations, or do we still stick with our existing policies and regulations?
Thank you very much for that question. As we have heard severally, that digitalization is something that technology in that changes everything. That's exciting for us. When there's a wind of change. Oh, now, bearing in mind that Nigeria is not in the same cadre or level as developed economy in terms of what we need to have as the basis for digitalization, like communication system, robust data network. That this is a journey of 1,000 miles that has actually started by this first step, data. Now, we have a very wonderful regulation. This Nigeria power system has all that it takes to be an example for it. Have all the market issue. No one is following them. No one seems to care about this. With DDMS, if we give this impetus, the acceptability required by mass, as the policy, the regulation. So actually, NEC is supposed to be the grateful of power. Plus, have this data available with integrity and independently validated. So useful. Now, look at the grid. That's for network data. But it's providing. With network data alone, you can govern in the case of the United Kingdom and various other institutions have developed electricity. With network data alone, we regulate the power. It's nothing new. Not over 100 years. So why are we? If this information comes in. Let me give you an example. If a disco said they are installing a transformer and they do not install it, no, don't see. Regulation. Nobody should have even declared this how this. The only thing. Because if you want a customer to say, I got 5 hours of supply, and this will say, no, I gave you 20. This CMS, what Engineer Farouk just said, really, really, and probe into the field and say, look, and lie with power, pass with. That means the next validate the claims of service-based every month, every day, every month. Then meet up, so pay this customer because we can validate it. There's so many things. Talk about alignment. Want to align who is doing what. Talk about legacy. You have legacy projects. Where is it? Okay, so in the events, we will know because we have data. That are being performance, so
quite interesting, the answers you provided in terms of the data providing that is what is occurring in terms of transparency and efficiency of this. However, whenever there is technology, as we all know, there is also fear of cyber security, the fear of how do we ensure integrity of the data. Now, my question to Benjamin, this keeps reoccurring as a recurring question, and I'm going to ask you in two prongs. One, how do we ensure the sustainability of this data? Because having a baseline data, if it's not being updated, it can get outdated. So how do we ensure the sustainability of that data? Beyond that, I will also want to ask you the second aspect of the question. How do we ensure protection of the data and also protection of ourselves based on digitalization? If from here I can use my mobile phone based on digitalization and switch off the electricity in my house, that is prone to being hijacked through cybersecurity by a hacker and control my house. Now, taking that in a situation whereby it's a power plant, somebody hijacked and start controlling the power plant, would that pose a risk? Despite the fact that we have seen the advantage of the digitization, but would that pose a risk to the power sector? So I would like you to answer this: the sustainability of the existing database that we've just been launched, and also the impact of digitalization in terms of the security of our lives and property generally.
Okay, thank you very much, Abba. I hope you can hear me. I think I had some technical challenges a while ago. I disconnected twice. So, but I'm thinking that I heard you clearly now that you're asking about data reliability and sustainability, and as well probably going forward data protection with regards to lives and property. Can you please confirm that's what you asked? Can you hear me?
Yes, that's exactly my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it's a bit difficult to come straight to the point because I have so many nuances or ideas of how to quickly answer your question. I've had the experience and opportunity to be with utility companies abroad as well for a while in management positions, and perhaps permit me to say one or two things with regards to how the systems are brought, and I'll come back to your question quickly. So in the developed, let's say more developed countries, there is a clear handshake between all stakeholders in the power industry. So the generator, the transmitter, the distributor, and then the guys delivering, even the metering and the billing of the final entity or the final customer. So what disruption came into this system with the new technology or Industry 4.0 is that distribution companies are somehow under great pressure to bring in new business models, because right now with Internet of Things and with blockchain technologies, there are already ideas of peer-to-peer distribution or sales of energy where the neighbor will sell to the other, thereby perhaps no longer buying from the distribution company, which is a challenge to them. So first of all, coming back to Nigeria, what we are doing now is the first stage, which means we are trying to have very good information and data to make good decisions and to allow that very valuable and transparent handshake between all the stakeholders. What that at the end will bring for Nigeria is, just like all the other colleagues have said, there is enough information now to understand what needs to be done. So on the policy side, by the time the system is clearly with all the states incorporated, the policymaker will understand, I need more electrification in this part. I need more mini grids, just like Engineer Farouk had said as well. You would understand, because it is not always very efficient for distribution companies to just expand their network without getting revenue for it. So going very far away from the grid, decentralized systems will be important. And that is one of the major aspects. There is a word, leapfrogging, which I usually don't like using, but there is hope with the current situation in the country that will, by gaining access to this information and knowledge about the development of energy assets, one can now find decentralized solutions that will be sustainable and affordable for the general public, make policies around them, improve investment opportunities around them to increase energy access. But that, on the other hand, is, in order to come back to your question, is definitely a challenge. So we've started this work now, and we hope to deliver it to the best, how will I say, possible technology that is available and equally very, very reliable. I think in the morning session, there was already the question around how Integra, what about the integrity of the data? So the information that we gave them in the morning, the right answer is that the data is hosted somewhere where none of us has really access to it. So it's a proven cloud infrastructure, which is called Microsoft Azure. And it is compliant with all the data policies of Nigeria, Germany, and the European Union. I think Engineer Farouk in the morning also mentioned the Galaxy backbone of Nigeria, where most of the government information will be hosted. We are currently discussing with the Federal Ministry of Power and the federal government to see how, by the time we're done with this, to integrate or to migrate the data from Microsoft Azure to the Galaxy backbone of Nigeria, where the information will be safeguarded according to Nigerian laws as well. Another question which he asked is how about the personal data or protection with regards to what is happening across the world. We all know today. I think one of the great discussions that I had once in Germany, working with a utility company, was that by the time you know that someone is not using his light anymore, you will think perhaps he's sleeping, he's left the house. By the time you are sure that no water has been used since 3 days in a building, then you know no one is in that building. So that could as well give access to people to understand that that house is empty and people could attempt to get into the building. So in order to safeguard that, there are technologies on ground where the information of utilization on ground or at particular points are somehow first protected before they are sent out. So, which means it's anonymized in a way that nobody will know exactly where it is generated from, because they use concentration points for different buildings, so that in the best case, you will not know which house exactly it is. So I think we are not yet there anyway, because what we are currently collecting is information on electrification and energy access in the country. So we are collecting information on distribution lines, and we are mapping out settlements across the country. There is no personal information, even at this stage, already being taken into the platform. So we do not have any fear of that. But as we are improving, because I think during the course of the day, there has been so many very valuable inputs talking about, for example, why don't we get the power plants on the platform as well, so that we understand what is generated. There's been ideas around getting the TCN network as well, because what we have currently is only the distribution network, which is 33 and 11 kV. So as time goes on, be rest assured that I think the Federal Ministry of Power, in collaboration with us, will always be very careful with the data protection policies. And as an international development agency, GIZ is obliged to keep to the laws of the country they are operating, and even the laws of Germany and the European Union. So that means we have the best aspect of cybersecurity in place for the data that we are currently collecting. And in the future, by the time personal data might be required, there will be a certain strategy on how to utilize those ones and how to make them anonymous before they are put on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Duke Benjamin. I think that's quite an assurance. I think because of time, I will go for the last questions, or second to the last question, depending on how good we are. But the one key question that I keep scoring, Farouk, is the fact that currently the Nigerian power sector is going through various programs and initiatives. We have spoken about the Presidential Power Initiative that is taking place, and we have there's the Transmission Rehabilitation Expansion Program that the Transmission Company of Nigeria is undertaking. Your department also is promoting some pilot programs of upgrade, the one that you commissioned in Torankawa, which we are understudying. So now, my question is, how do you see digitalization in long term, or medium term, or in long term, affecting this? We need to tweak programs for them to fit into what the future may look like in terms of digitalization, or is it that the digitalization will enhance this implementation of this program? That is just one bit of the question. Then the second level of the question is coordination that the Honorable Minister of Power is saying that he wants to promote within the sector. How is the data going to create that coordination? I'm not very clear on this. How would a centralized data management system create that coordination? Thank you.
Thank you, Abba. I think before I get to your question, I want to refer to the last point raised by Duke, which was actually emphasized by the Executive Director of Niger Delta Power Holding Company in the morning. You see, the issue of data is in different layer and classes of need. There is data that you must use the HTTPS secure system to manage. There is data that you don't need because there is no reason for anyone to actually tamper with it. So what is important for us at this time is to be able to identify class of data based on the risk carried around it, and then figure out a particular system. So for instance, you can always link any database with the right authorization to CMS, but going down the line, you may be subject to even more detailed scrutiny. Like I've said also in the morning, the Central Bank of Nigeria and of course the Treasury in the US are all managed through IT. And so if they are not secured, they would have been vulnerable in many cases. Of course, you have cases where they are. But just to give you that comfort, that depending on what kind of system and what kind of risk you only need to set up in a particular party. Now, coming back to the alignment of our projects and programs with digitalization. See, the beauty about digitalization is always an add-on. Many of the things we are doing today are already happening. So what digitalization is coming to do is to bring additional value. For instance, if you talk about upgrade projects, the ability to introduce modern ICT technology creates that room for aggregation. Aggregation, for instance, of different kind of projects together to be owned and managed by a single operator as a portfolio. Now, that is one single most biggest barrier in terms of ability for big-time investors to be able to run into. We are currently talking to a very big company, Nigerian grown, that is interested in coming into the mini-grid space, but they want hundreds of mini-grids, and they do not need to send a staff in each and every of those mini areas. So all they need to do now is to set up those mini-grids and aggregate them through a common platform where they can monitor and manage them remotely without having to go there. So in terms of digitalization, you can clearly see how it's helping bring in investment and create new paradigms. Now, talking about issues like PPI, TREC, I think Engineer Ideu has talked extensively about these areas. Firstly, the digitalization will allow for integration of sector. Like I've said, you can, for instance, create opportunity within every generation plant in the country where each and every unit that is operating will transmit real-time online the capacity available at any minute in the day. Added to that, you can also be able to make sure you take on minute by minute information regarding the energy that is being delivered outside. And of course, you can cascade this down to transmission, to distribution. As we speak right now in my office, I'm using a pilot IoT meter, which I can use to up my light in my office, and I'm getting on minute by minute reports on the current voltage, frequency, active, reactive power, and these are coming extremely cheap. They are not expensive. They are much cheaper than the normal conventional meters. So with all of this, it's only creating what I've said in the beginning, transparency, because I really don't want to go into the details of the jargon. What we are asking for in the electricity sector to do is transparency, accountability, flexibility, and control. And so when you talk about this transparency, it gives everybody the opportunity to see end to end what number of electrons have been generated and who has consumed what. When you talk about control, it gives us the opportunity to stay in my office and switch off my light, to make sure I shift my load, to allow the distribution company to take loads to where it's needed at the right time. It also, when you talk about flexibility, it allows a customer to make choice to buy electricity like he's buying kerosene or candles, right? I can remember when MTN and the other big mobile operators came, their credit was 1,500 and above, and nobody was buying. But in the recent times, reports have indicated that they are selling 10 naira, 50 naira, 100 naira tokens, which clearly creates a massive aggregation of capital across the entire space, to the extent that you are able today to raise funds through 10 naira, 5 naira, so many things that can fund the entire power sector. So all we are talking about, of course, by the way, Duke Benjamin did mention about the hackathon we made. We just launched. The hackathon is a competition of brilliant minds picked up through a very transparent process. So we have identified 4 challenge areas. One was finance, operations, planning, and I think one other aspect. All of these young men and women across the country come out with new ideas, and most compelling of it is the ability to raise money in a way that you can never imagine through small tokens that can actually take away the burden of funding the power sector from this, from government. So I think in my my best judgment, digitalization, apart from the transparency and all the other add-ons, it creates that democratization, if you like, of the electricity industry, where people do things based on needs, based on their own interests, without having to be dictated into any particular straitjacket kind of situation. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we are not doing very well with timing. In just 2 minutes, the panelists, because we want to give audience the opportunity to ask questions before we. So quickly, my last question to Idu. Now, you have been a public commentator, and you have written so much vastly in Nigerian power sector and the global power sector, right? And that gives you so much insight. Now, my last question to you is, how do you see the private sector, what the private sector needs to do to help in transitioning the Nigerian electricity market from where it is to a digital market integrated to achieve all the benefits you mentioned associated with the digitization of the sector?
Thank you very much for that question. Quite interesting. All of these beautiful things done by Ministry of Power and the partners, the private sector needs to key into this. So apart from policy, which is in the hands of Ministry of Power anyway, need for education, policy drive the operators into this project. As highlighted earlier, most of the operators, individual companies are doing all these things actually. They have all of these things. Just they need to create all of them. Stakeholder engagement, engage all of them, then the investors will come. Investors follow the trend. They look at this, they are already watching this, they are aware of what is going on. Once they see integrity of it, they're going to follow. So we need a situation where private sector keys into this. That's in the hand of partners as well as Bishop Power. All we need to do is seek acceptability. Case of workshop, conferences, because when they key in, they'll be registering, they'll have data, as long as they know that integrity, security, and all the things. That's it. Milestone. Life of the Nigerian power sector.
Thank you very much, Engineer. Last question to Mr. Carlos. And normally disruption within a sector comes with a different business models, right? Now, my question is, what should we expect in terms of a different business model that may emerge in the Nigerian or in any power sector, power electricity market as a result of digitalization? So what kind of different business model or different way of doing things that may come up as a result of this digitalization?
Yeah, thank you very much. let me concentrate on one example that the head of program, Duke Benjamin, has referred to, and Farouk has also referred to. So in the case of solar home systems, yeah, with digitalization, you can come up with solutions, for example, for peer-to-peer trading, yeah, which means that any owner of a solar home system can become a small entrepreneur who will buy excess capacity, so a larger solar home system than he would require for himself and his family, or herself and her family, and for example, connect her neighbor and provide power to them, yeah, and get some income from that, yeah. So that, for example, is a disruption that would also, as Engineer Farouk said, contribute to democratize in the end the power sector, and allow, like, people who are not necessarily experts in the field and who do not have like their core business area is not there, to also contribute and benefit from the power sector. So I just would like to give that as an example, but please let me know if you want to elaborate on anything. Thank you.
It's quite interesting, Carlos, the answer you have given, and it even makes me to start thinking whether I should start thinking on investing in the power sector and be an entrepreneur. I think what I got from your answer is that digitalization will provide opportunity to go into different models of business operations that without they were not available. So thank you very much for this very good answer. And my last question to Duke Benjamin is, in a nutshell, do you see digitalization promoting, creating job opportunities for taking over job opportunities? Normally, when there is automation, we get to hear that people lose their jobs, job opportunities. Now, with this digitalization in the power sector, creates job opportunities, be a prelude of people losing their job opportunities.
Thank you very much, Abba, for that question. I think we have now mentioned hackathon and mapathon in more times during this discussion. So those are already examples of capacity building that will lead to job opportunities. So I think this intervention being something that is very interactive and that needs to be kept up to date. I remember someone mentioning today during the morning session that the data needs to always be updated with time. So for that, we've tried to create capacity already, get young minds that are very innovative into this, win them for this platform in form of organizing competitions in named hackathon and mapathons. So we are hoping that this will create the opportunity for private sector to start developing not only capacity, but businesses around this. So we hope ultimately that Nigeria will create new business cases around, or business opportunities and employment opportunities around this database. So I think there's one thing Mr. Idowu mentioned, private sector actually goes to where there is business. What government needs to do is to create the enabling environment, which is equally one of the topics we are supporting under NESP. I think that once the transparency is there and private sector sees clearly that it is that the risk can be calculated in a particular venture, they will be able to invest. And once they're investing, that creates jobs immediately. I would like to use a few seconds to say one thing that is equally very important that I had not mentioned when you asked me the question about data. I would like to answer how the data can be used, the data that is on this platform. As you all know, we've now created data, and for sustainability purposes, we made it on the open source platform. And everybody can access this data, everybody can download this data, and everybody can modify this data. So, but on the platform, there is a link that will tell everybody the usage rights of the data. So basically, in a nutshell, it means that once you download information from the site and want to use it, you have to give credit to Federal Ministry of Power and NESP. And if you should modify the data before you now use it, you equally give credit to those that, put the data in place, FMP and NESP, and then you give credit to yourself for the modification. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Duke Benjamin. And because of time, I have more questions to ask the panel. When we have opportunities to have experienced professional in the power sector like this, we would like to tap as much as possible from their experience. However, we do not have enough time. I will just give opportunity for 2 questions from the viewers. If there's any question before we get the last point.
Thank you very much. My name is my question is the Director Renewable Energy and Rural Access Department oversee the activities of the Rural Electrification Agency. And we rightly know that the Rural Electrification Implementation and Strategy Plan, Section 3.323 of that, plan has already indicated the establishment of this central data management system, which was forwarded to Mr. President and approved in 2016. Please, I want you to explain to us actually this central data management. How is it going to, impact on the implementation of the Rural Electrification Fund, which is actually a key mandate of the Rural Electrification Agency under the RESI? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will take the second question before the panelists. Yourself and question.
I'm Engineer Kadri from International Energy Services. My question, is there anywhere on the platform that we indicate when the information, that is the data on the platform, is updated? And Mr. Duke talked about the open source system that you can bring in information and modify. How do you verify the integrity of the person that is bringing an information? And finally, in the first section, that the Engineer Farouk mentioned that they can obtain data from after certification by NEMSA. I want to ask that as a contractor, that how the data collection that will not affect commissioning and delaying the completion of a project.
Very good questions. I think so. You asked 2 questions from the International Energy Company, right? International Energy Services Company. So the first level of your question, I want Duke Benjamin to answer it. The second question, and the question from the Engineer Bakar, Engineer Farouk, you should answer it. So I'll start with Engineer Farouk. Afterwards, Duke Benjamin, you answer the second question. Thank you.
I'll start with the last question, which is with delay, the possibility of delaying projects. the cost of ensuring that you get the data for this to be integrated. I think we don't foresee any problem, because the project data is normally going to be required by the certifying agencies. It might not be before the project is commissioned that we will look for this data. It might be after the commissioning of the project, because we don't have a project until it's commissioned, right? So I do not see the relation, because a commission project would have been certified already. So we will be relying on already which the NEMSA or NAC already have data for. And if we have a month or 2 months of delays or being behind, I don't think that should be a big problem. So I do not really see a big problem there. Now, talking about the question, I think Engineer Abakar is in a better position to answer the question he asked me. Having said that, I think I would like to mention that, yes, it's true, the CDMS is meant to be a national one-sector plan, which will allow for integration of the grid and the upgrades. The Rural Education Agency have been doing fantastic work in terms of getting access. The challenge we've seen has been that of ability to work within the confines of the approved recipe, and I believe that's what Engineer Abakar is referring to. The area has supported this project from the beginning, and I believe they understand clearly that this is a new opportunity for the sector, for all of us to be able to do things in a well structured, well regulated way. So I think REA will be very excited to get this perspective. I don't know if maybe anyone else will have any further from the meeting. Otherwise, I think this. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would like Duke Benjamin to answer the question about
open source. Probably you mean ABBA, right? I didn't hear you well, but Carlos, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Thank you very much. Okay, so I will take the question asked about open source. How do we ensure integrity of the data? So what I meant with open source is, and sustainability actually, is that for this web map, website, and all these tools to be sustainable, we chose a platform that is easy to maintain and sustain by the Nigerian government in the future, even if there is no NESP anymore. Now, coming back to the open source, it doesn't still mean that everyone has access to change anything on the data. So it will be within the auspices of the Federal Ministry of Power, with the stakeholders like REA and others, that will be given the capacity to understand how to use the platform, and equally to be able to validate the information that only allowed stakeholders are able to upload, and they will be validated before they are uploaded in order to ensure integrity of the information that is on the platform. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Because of time, I would have wanted to give the panel members one minute to just their vision of the sector. But this a workshop. So in a nutshell, I think what we have gotten from this discussion is the fact that digitalization promotes in transparency. One thing also that I've just mentioned is creating also a platform for integration of the various sectors. So when you have a sector that is compartmentalized into various segments. So you require this digitalization to integrate these various segments into one common objective. It will also help in creating the balance between the demand and supply, which is critical for the sustainability and the operation of the sector. It will help in facilitating investment, which was mentioned by Engineer Dewu. He mentioned one phrase that once there is transparency, it automatically attracts investors. So if we are able to create a data that is transparent and with all the integrity, investors will have the comfort to go into that. Another thing also that I picked from Carlos Miro is the new business model that will come into being as a result of digitalization. He gave the example of me being a consumer of electricity. Through digitalization, I will be able to even be a seller of electricity to the on-grid, and it's only digitalization that will provide you with such kind of unique opportunities, and that's an idea that I would definitely take home to. They also mentioned that the need to have a change of regulation so that we fit into this new norm that is going to take place in the power sector. Without much ado, I would like us to appreciate our former panel members. In the introduction, I say we have people with over 100 years of experience in the Nigerian power sector, and it's not all the time you have such kind of people around and to share their experience. So please, let's appreciate our panel members. Thank you very much, and on behalf of the program and the Federal Ministry of Power, the Honorable Minister, I thank you all for this opportunity to moderate this session, and we look forward to the next workshop that is taking place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Abba, for moderating that particular session. In the past hours, we've been getting quite a number of questions on the platform as well. So I would like to announce that questions can as well be sent to nesp@giz.de. And any questions sent down there, we would make answers available within the next days. Thank you for that.